October the 21st, poison pies and nights. One fungus that all would-be foragers should be wary of is poison pie, Hebeloma crustuliniforme, so often encountered in woodland glades. Like almost all other poison pies, Hebeloma species, it causes gastric upsets, in this case, vomiting, cramps, and diarrhea. Fortunately, they all look very similar, with key features such as soft brown, smooth or sticky caps that are always the shape of a raised pie, even when quite young. They also tend to have creamy brown gills, which often exude droplets at their edges. In fact, at first glance, many look not unlike the browner mushrooms sold in London supermarkets. Hebeloma crustuliniforme itself is more the colour of uncooked dough, and even has some flecks that look like flour at the top of its stem. Like so many other poison pies, it also smells of radishes. It is part of a group of mini-species which are so alike they can only really be told apart by their microscopic characters. There are about 20 other poison pies in the southeast, about half of which occur regularly in London. Some have interesting scents, none more so than the scented Hebeloma, Hebeloma sacariolens. Amusingly, in some literature, it is said to smell of harlots, being reminiscent of cheap orange blossom perfume. Others with interesting perfumes are Hebeloma radicosum, almonds, and Hebeloma laterinum, cocoa. Another common large Hebeloma is the bitter poison pie, Hebeloma synapizans, which smells of raw potatoes. Hebeloma longicordum is taller and more slender than the others and has no smell at all. Like one or two others, it has a stem which changes colour from top to bottom, being tawny brown at its base, then turning white towards the cap. Some have remnants of the veil that once covered the cap. For example, Hebeloma mesophaeum. This means that there are either patches of veil left on the cap, as well as possibly threads around its edges or upper stems. As sometimes where these toadstools are found can also help. Hebeloma anthracophyllum prefers burnt ground. It's tougher and more elastic than the rest, but still with the typical fawn cap paler at its edges. In contrast, Hebeloma leucosarx is very similar, but prefers wetter ground underneath, birches and willows. One or two poison pies have a more sinister association with corpses. Hebeloma radicosum has a long taproot with which it seeks out dead animals, such as moles underground, to provide any additional nitrogen it may need. Closely related species elsewhere are called ghoul fungi because of similar practices. It was hoped at least one species would have a preference for human remains, perhaps indicating where any unknown berry bodies might be found. So far, this doesn't seem to be the case. Knights, Tricholoma species, at first glance, are not unlike Hebelomas with their domed raised pie caps and their thick-set stems. However, unlike Hebelomas, their caps are often irregularly shaped, split, and often covered in scales or fibers. They tend to have a mealy, flowery smell, rather than one of radishes, which is so typical of Hebelomas. They also come in a much greater range of colours, and their gills are usually much wider, more widely spaced. Most are various shades of brown, but they can be black, white, yellow, red, and even bluish-green. A single species, such as the soap Tricholoma, Tricholoma saponaceum, has greys, browns, and greens on its cap, and a buff-coloured stem with dark streaks and gills which may have bluish-grey margins. The cap may also sometimes be covered in red spots, and if its white flesh is exposed, it turns pink, as well as smelling of soap. Although tricholomas should not be tasted, they tend to be either nondescript or bitter, with only one or two being poisonous. There are in the region of 80 in Europe, 50 in Britain, and possibly 30 in London, of which only around 10 are likely to be encountered. The tricholoma that always attracts the most attention is the sulphur tricholoma, Tricholoma sulphureum. This is because of its unusual deep sulphur colour and its strong scent of coal gas and tar. There are other paler yellow species, for example, Tricholoma flavivirens. Fortunately, it is rare, and it is one of that small group of fungi that cannot be eaten with alcohol. One unusual species, the blushing Tricholoma, Tricholoma orerubans, Although often slightly pink, has yellow threads, its mycelium, as its base. The sulphur tricholoma tends to appear towards the end of October, as does another common species, Tricholoma terrium. It has a grey felty cap and tends to be found in troops in pinewoods, whereas the sulphur tricholoma prefers broadleaf woods. Another tricholoma that can cause a stir is the wanton toadstool, Tricholoma lascivum. This time it is the smell that amuses. It is again a heady mixture of honeysuckle and orange blossom, reminiscent to some authors in the past of cheap perfume and therefore lascivious behaviour. In London, it is mainly brown tricholomas we see, with the birch night Tricholoma fulvum possibly being seen the most. This is a handsome species with yellowish gills that develop brown spots with age. If split, it also has yellow flesh separating it from other brown species. The most arresting brown tricholoma is probably Tricholoma scaly, as can sometimes just look like a shiny conker on the woodland floor. In this case, the shine is not due to a polished surface, but due to a sticky, viscid covering on the cap. Tricholoma australoides is very similar, being chestnut brown, but has a flowery, mealy smell, which Tricholoma oscari has not. Rather more of a reddish brown are Tricholoma imbricatum and Tricholoma vaccinum. Both have caps covered in dark scales, although those on Tricholoma vaccinum could almost be taken for wool. One other brown tricholoma stands out. This is Tricholoma populinum, which unsurprisingly grows near poplars, but also has the unusual combination of scents of both cucumber and melons. Equally, as much variation occurs with the grey tricholomas. On the whole, they usually have caps with dark lines or fibrils, which sometimes look like flattened hair or give the cap a salt and pepper look. Tricholoma sculpturatum is grey-brown with dark brown fibrous scales. It has been found in various places around London, including Buckingham Palace Gardens. Tricholoma algaraceum is similar, but more likely to be found in chalky beech woods. Tricholoma atrasquamosum is darker than the rest, with almost a sooty appearance. It even seems to collect dirt and debris on its cap surface. It can be found in conifer woods. The grey tricholoma, most sought after, is the large, edible Tricholoma portentosum. Even though it tastes and smells mealy, it is regarded as good eating, especially in parts of Spain. Its cap margin and gills yellow with age, and its stem also flushes yellow. In London, it gets ignored because of possible confusions with other bitter and poisonous species.